Hi, I'm Lauren from LSP Actions, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you a little bit more of an advanced way of adding bluebells to your image or any of the LSP botanical and floral overlays to create a completely magical scene. We're basically going to be planting bluebells. These are my twins. I took them out. We were looking for bluebells. We barely found. I think you can see there's a couple here hiding in the bushes. There was nothing. So let's go ahead and start adding bluebells. For this one, to keep with the manual, more advanced theme, we're going to just add manually by hand instead of using the actions. If you haven't already watched the other tutorials about downloading your overlays, unzipping the file and loading the actions and getting started, you can go ahead and watch those if you're in any doubt about what I'm doing. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm basically going to plant bluebells around the scene, plant them in the wood and add blur to make them fit in and make it look like a real bluebell would. So I'm going to grab some of the individual bluebell stems and just drag and drop them onto my image. So I'm just going to resize and I'm just going to start planting these. At the moment without blur, I'm going to start adding blur in, but let's just add some bluebells to our scene. Let's pop this little guy here. I'm also going to show you how you can kind of duplicate some of these. I'm just going to flip that horizontal by right clicking. You can see they're building up in our layers panel. If you can't see your layers, then go to window and hit layers. We're just planting bluebells. Da, 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 da. Obviously they're going to get smaller the further back they go. And at the moment obviously they're all in focus, which does look a bit weird because this is a very shallow depth of field. Image shot at 200 millimeters, f2.8, which leads to a very compressed background. So I'm just dragging and dropping our little individual stems in at the moment. Okay, so now what we're going to do is use blur to start blending these in. So let's start at the back. I'm going to go up to filter and choose blur, Gaussian blur, and slide the radius until it works for your image and hit OK. You want it to match the depth of field that's in your image. So I'm just selecting these. I have auto select on my selection tool, which is V on your keyboard. And any of these that you need to mask, you can come down here, the little rectangle with the circle in. It adds a white layer mask. You can grab a brush set to black and just dab this off. So I'm just painting that stem away a little bit on that one, and I'll probably do the same for this one too. And at any point you can drag these, you can move them around, you can reposition. So let's go for this one, filter, blur. And I'm just working through now, I've got a few in place, filter blur, Gaussian blur. Of course, the closer they get to your depth of field, the less blur you're going to want. So I'm just going to add a mask to this one and grab a brush and just mask him in a little bit. And then we come to this one down here, which in theory is on our focal plane, so would be in focus. But I find they do look a little bit better in a scene like this with a little bit of blur, so I'm still going to add some blur, just not very much, just a touch, just gives a bit of motion in there. Now what I'm going to do is hold down shift and select all these bluebells. Let's just press the little, hide the little drop down there to hide the blurs. I'm going to right click, duplicate layers, and then Control or Command T, that basically selects all of them, our duplicates. Right click, flip horizontal, make them a little bit larger, and we can add some more in this way. Rotate them around a little bit as well because we don't want them looking like an exact mirror image. And I'm just going to add a little more blur onto these because I've moved them back. So it's just kind of using your eyes, using your own perspective really, moving them around, adding blur, just making it fit your scene, because every image that you work on is going to have a slightly different technique. So I'm just coming in, adapting the blur for these, adding a little bit more, a little bit less, moving them around a little bit. It's really quite therapeutic actually. And this one here, I'm going to move this one as well, it's kind of floating. So we've really started planting bluebells, which is quite good fun. So how about we add one of the bluebell framer scenes here. I'm going to go for, how about Bluebell Framer 2? Let's try that one. I'm going to drag this to the top of the layers panel so it's kind of on top of everything, and resize out, making sure that it's hitting the edges of the image on both sides. I'm going to drag that down. And due to the depth of field in this image, very shallow depth of field, I'm going to add a blur, but because this is a bigger area, I'm going to go on the blur gallery and add field blur. Field blur takes a little longer to work, which is why Gaussian blur is fine for individual flowers and things like that, but when you're adding a scene, you want to kind of be able to add more of a kind of a lens blur, which is what the field blur adds in this sense. Just close down the little smart filter there. I'm going to add a layer mask by hitting the rectangle with the circle in it. And I'm just going to take this away from some areas. Just dabbing literally with the brush here, just fading and taking away. My brush is set to 100% opacity and 25% flow. Now I want to add some in the background. Let me just take that away a little bit more there. I want to add some in the background. So what I'm going to do for that is take the Bluebell Framer stems here, which you can see this line of lovely stems with depth of field, and these are going to go in the background. We can see the background is kind of arching up a little bit, so I'm just going to warp these, and it doesn't matter too much because I mainly want the colours, not so much the shape. I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to come up filter, Gaussian blur, and really blur these ones. Not so much that we just get a blob of colour, but enough that they are completely blurred. Add them in there, add a layer mask with a black brush, and just paint these off a little bit. So you see we've got some in the background now. Control Command J, I'm going to duplicate, Control Command T. Oh, it's not going to let me, but that's fine. I'm just going to move that because I did a warp on there. And I'm just going to then rotate that a little bit. Now grab your black brush, I'm just going to paint this off. It's just adding a little bit of bluebell, a bit more into the background without having to individually add so many. And I'm going to do the same thing over the other side. I'm going to flip these horizontal by right clicking and shrinking them down. And the same thing again, I'm just going to warp them about a little bit, just so we get a bit more of an interesting kind of shape. Filter, Gaussian blur, make sure they're nicely blurred in. Add a mask and just dab it about a little bit. I think we definitely need more bluebells around our subject, so I'm going to go for another round of bluebells. What I'm going to do is hold down Shift and just select the individual stems and drag them in. Hit enter every time. This is just going to kind of add them all together. It's placing them all as smart objects into your image. And again, if you're not so confident dragging, dropping and placing, you can use the Photoshop actions and watch the other tutorials of how to use those. Just use Shift to select all these stems in our layers panel, Control Command T. Let's shrink them all down to size all at once. And hit my move tool, make sure auto select is on. Let's see what we have here. And let's just start adding them in. And adding the blur as we see fit. At any point you can Control or Command T, right click, flip horizontal. Control or Command T is basically your free transform, and that means that you can make it bigger, make it smaller, rotate it, flip it, warp it, anything like that. I'm going to add a layer mask to this one. I'm literally just playing with this image as we kind of go. Okay, back to V on my keyboard for my move tool so I can click and select one of these. I'm going to Control Command T and flip this one horizontal. And again, adding some blur. Plant that one in the grass, add some blur. Not quite as much blur needed for that one. Let's just rotate this one just a little bit. I think flip him horizontal and plant it over here. You do want your bluebells to look a little bit like they're in clusters as well. Adding a layer mask with a brush set to black, just so I can take this off. And again, if I'm going too fast or anything, please do watch the other tutorials, especially the first tutorial where I really go a little bit slower and show you exactly how to get started with these. I'm just going to select and close these down. So you can see we've added an awful lot of bluebells to our scene, but it's looking really, really beautiful. So there is before. Actually looks quite empty now. And there's after adding our bluebells in. So you can continue adding and adding until you get the exact bluebell fill that you really, really want to create with your image. Here's another one I did earlier, playing with this one. So you can see I've really added loads and loads of bluebells in using the exact same method as we're using here. I just went a little overboard with this one, but I absolutely love it. I think it's really, really beautiful. Seeing the depth of field in these bluebells is really, really nice, and it can really frame your subjects in. So if you're shooting bluebells and, you know, there weren't enough, or you want to add more, or you want to add the frame or plant some individual flowers, you can do that using the Bluebell and Meadow Flower set. I'm just going to select all of these and you can drag them into a group. Let's call the group Bluebells, and that keeps your layers panel nice and healthy. Before and after. And you can duplicate this. This is something I've just thought about. Control or Command T, flip horizontal. Let's just move it a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. And you get this whole other kind of set of bluebells to play with. I'm just going to add that in. That's just a really quick way of just adding kind of more to your image there. And you can see we've just doubled our bluebells. Just be a little bit clever when you're moving them around, just to make sure that you're not getting any kind of obvious duplications like we have some down here. So I'm just going to add a layer mask, black brush, on Bluebell's copy, because that was our flipped image, and just take that one away there. There we go. No bluebells, bluebells. And you can find this set along with all of the other new floral and botanical framers and overlays over at lsp-actions.com. Please do watch the other video tutorials for more tips and advice in using these, more creative methods you can employ when using floral overlays, and also how to get started if you're a little bit of a beginner or you're just not quite confident enough yet to know what you're doing. If you watch the first tutorials especially, the tutorials say what's included. You can just click through those at your own pace. Enjoy using these. Please tag me in the group, the LSP Actions editing group on Facebook, because I'd love to see what you're doing with these. Really, really curious to see how beautiful your images look with these added over the top. So enjoy. I'm Lauren. Thanks for watching.